Howdy. It's Saturday again. Finally the weekend, and of course that means Untold Tales from this side of nowhere. I'm your host, Connor Jones, and I'm bringing you an Untold Tale Retold. Before we get going with the podcast, though, here's a message from our sponsors.
We're sponsored by Basins Market, located in Basin, Wyoming. Basins Market is your destination for groceries, fresh produce, and the best meat department in the Bighorn Basin. Come in and sample their wide selection of products Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Do you have a noxious weed problem? The team at 307 Pest Management can help. We offer residential and commercial noxious weed management that is safe and affordable. Whether you have a parking lot, a yard, or some production land that needs treated for noxious weeds, 307 Pest Management is ready to help get your weeds under control. Give them a call today for a free quote at 307-250-0614 or send an email to 307pestmanagement@gmail.com.
All right, for this week's Untold Tale Retold, we're going back to a story about the mountains, which is very fitting for summer. So this one is a throwback to episode 11, Murder on the Mountain. And it happens to feature one of our first ever guests on the podcast. Enjoy. Well, this week I am very excited because I am joined for the second time in the history of the podcast by a guest. So I have here with me today my oldest sister. My oldest sister. Maybe I should say eldest. Does it feel better that way? My eldest sister, Camilla, and she's a big fan of the podcast, devoted listener, all that stuff. But she's got this idea that these stories are based on real events from our history. So she wanted to be here today to set some facts straight. So welcome to the podcast, Camilla.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and, as you say, put some facts straight, because I think you take a lot of creative liberties here.
Well, I mean, everyone knows that any likeness to persons living or dead is purely coincidental. So, well, maybe tell us a little about yourself, Camilla. You live in the Bighorn Basin, right?
Yeah, I do. I live here in the Bighorn Basin. I have my husband and my 3 sons, a dog, 2 cats, and 15 chickens.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Yeah, she's actually a pharmacist with Basin Pharmacy, one of the sponsors of our show. So, thanks for your support of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, today's story is called Murder on the Mountain. And it sounds quite ominous because it is. This is probably one of my scariest stories, so you'll need to buckle in. And Camilla, she has a few comments to make throughout the story, so stay tuned for those as well. But here goes the story. You ready, Camilla?
I'm ready.
Okay. Out of all the places I love in Wyoming, perhaps one of the places that is nearest and dearest to my heart is the square mile of mountain land homesteaded by my great-grandpa in the Bighorn Mountains back in 1926, the same year my grandfather was born. It wasn't exactly the height of the homesteading era, but the federal government still offered land to those who could hang on for a grueling 3 winters. Because of Great-Grandpa Jones, and perhaps even more important, Great-Grandma Jones, our family enjoys ownership of a square mile of beautiful mountain land. The mountain was a child's paradise. While my parents sawed out the lumber to build our house, we kids spent the long summer days running around the mountain as wild and free as a band of outlaws. We explored caves, ate wild raspberries, built forts, and got filthy in ways only possible when playing in Black Mountain dirt. We were happier than a pack of coons in a corn patch. When we needed a break to rest up and refuel, we would return to the 3-room cabin where a propane refrigerator and a wood stove met our needs for keeping food cold and warming it up. In my mind, the cabin was all that a cabin should be. It was small and cramped. The old cook stove supplied a constant fire risk, and the rough-sawn old pine boards that formed the walls of the cabin were a constant reminder that the old building was a conduit into the past.
It seemed things would go on in their paradisiacal state all summer long, but like a day without wind in Wyoming, all good things must end. Though I am sure my parents could list off a host of dangers on the mountain, from broken bones to black bears, only my sister Candace could have been adequately prepared for the threat that materialized one beautiful summer day on the mountain. You see, Candace had a very vigilant personality. She was also very good at directing the affairs of us, her younger siblings, some might say too good, and she was very aware of things others often missed, including the supernatural. We first noticed this ability years prior to the current story when Discovery Channel featured a documentary chronicling the activities and behaviors of Sasquatch. Candace listened intently to the documentary, occasionally peeking out from behind the pillow with which she hid her face so she could catch a glimpse of the monster. From then on, Candace was on high alert. She guarded herself against potential run-ins with Bigfoot by posting either Fred or I by the bathroom door to keep watch, lest the beast should find its way into our trailer house while she was in the loo.
Now hold on. It wasn't while I was in the loo. It was only while I was showering. You're never more naked than when you're naked.
Well, we're talking about Candace here, of course, but I see your point. But, it was, I mean, back with the story, just hypothetically here, but it was forever after a secret wish of Fred and mine that we could somehow procure one of the life-size Jack Link's beef jerky Sasquatch cutouts. So we could post it at the end of a dark hallway where Candace could find it. But alas, our dream was never realized. There's still a chance we could do that though, right?
Only if you have a death wish.
Oh, okay. Candace wasn't just on the lookout for Sasquatch, though. She considered it her personal responsibility to keep each of us kids safe. Being the older sister was a full-time job, and when we were on the mountain, she took safety seriously. Now, Al and Fred, she once told my twin brother and I, remember there can be bears up here on the mountain, so you have to be careful. If we ever see a bear, you two make lots of noise and try to look as big as possible. That should scare the bear off. If he's a black bear, if he's a grizzly, you should still make as much noise as possible. I thought if we saw a grizzly bear, you're supposed to back away quietly and try to avoid him, Fred said. Well, yes, Candace said. But if you make enough noise, that will give us girls time to go for help. So you would leave me alone with the bear? Fred retorted. No, of course not, Candace exclaimed. I would leave Al with you too. In fact, Candace was so good at going for help, she seemed to be doing it all the time. On one occasion, we kids had spent the morning with my parents cutting firewood, and around lunchtime they sent us back to the cabin to make sandwiches. We all headed for the cabin, walking along the tree line at the edge of the canyon. We hadn't gone far when the trio of trouble, as my sisters are widely known, kicked it into high gear and sped off like a pack of bloodhounds after a jackrabbit. Hey, where are you going? I yelled after them. They must have seen a bear, Fred gasped. Do you think so? I yelled.
Certain a carnivorous cave dweller was hot on our heels, Al and I broke into a run, but the trio proved faster than us. Before long, they were out of sight. When we stopped to catch our breath next to a spruce tree, a thought occurred to me. Hey, Al, if they're going to get help, then why are they running towards the cabin? Mom and Dad are back there sawing firewood, I said, pointing back towards the direction we came from. Gee, Fred panted. You're right. He looked all around us. I don't see a bear anywhere either. Which way did they go? I asked. With all these trees, I can't see where the cabin is. I'm not sure where it is either, Fred said, recovering his breath. The girls went so fast I didn't see where they went. But I think the cabin is that way, he said, pointing into the trees and down into the canyon. That can't be right, Fred, I argued. That's the canyon. If we go down there, we'll get lost. The cabin is that way. I pointed the direction I thought the trio had headed. No, it's that way, Fred replied. No, it's that way, I countered. Before long, we were having a full-blown argument. Finally, Fred held up his hands to quiet me. I have an idea, he said. What if we pray about it? In hindsight, I should have been more suspicious of Fred's intentions in this situation. But in the face of his stubbornness, I couldn't argue with him about the need for divine intervention. So, the two of us kneeled down. No sooner had I shut my eyes, however, than I heard the sound of someone scrambling to their feet, then running away from me. I opened my eyes in time to see Fred galloping off toward the canyon. If Candace had been in my situation, she probably would have done the responsible thing and gone to get help. But instead, I sprang to my feet and leveled Fred from behind with an impressive tackle that would have made any high school football coach proud. Ow, let go of me! I'm going to the cabin! Fred screeched. He gave me a good kick to the jaw, and I loosened my death grip on his other leg, but managed to get his shoe off before he was up and running again. I repeated my previous performance, made slightly easier because Fred was slowed down some by the fact he was wearing only one shoe. Rolling in the black mountain dirt, we punched, we pulled, and we grunted. We bit, we snorted, and tore at each other until Fred landed a solid kick in my stomach and knocked the wind out of me. I lay on the ground and watched his retreating form weave between trees as he headed for the bottom of the canyon. Just as I was getting ready to run for help, my mother appeared. Al, what on earth happened? She gasped, coming near. Fred, I groaned. He's heading for the canyon. She looked where I was pointing and glimpsed a dirty little boy with one shoe sprinting through the trees. Fred, she yelled with that voice only mothers can produce, the one that has a magical, paralyzing effect on children. Get back here! Fred froze, paralyzed in mid-stride, then turned and trotted back towards us like a dog who's been caught chasing sheep. Don't you know that's the canyon? The cabin is that way, Mom thundered. I noticed, with no small amount of pride, she was pointing in nearly the same direction I had told Fred earlier. Now, why are you covered in dirt? And where's Fred's shoe? Mom asked. I was trying to stop him from running into the canyon, I said. I see. You weren't doing a very good job, she observed. Why was he trying to run into the canyon? Candace and the girls left us behind. Fred thought that was the way to the cabin, I replied, raking some dirt out of my hair with my fingernails. Where are Candace and your sisters? Mom asked. Candace was going to get help because there was a bear, I said. Humph, Mom snorted. I bet she was. Just then, Fred came up to us, panting a little bit. I knew that was the canyon, he huffed. Fred was just chasing me, and Candace and the girls left. So I've heard, Mom sighed. Come on, let's go get some lunch. Yes, Candace was dedicated to her duty as an older sister. She was probably so good at it because she had so many little siblings. Her real moment of elder sibling greatness was yet to come, though. A day or two later, Mom and Dad were back to sawing lumber, and we kids were at the cabin when Candace had a great idea. Hey, she said with a gleam in her eye, I have a great idea. Let's use the old cook stove to make brownies.
Now, wait a minute. When I agreed to do this with you, I didn't realize that you would be giving out all of Candace's embarrassing stories.
Well, Candace just has so many, it's hard to restrain myself, I guess.
Candace has a lot of embarrassing stories. Oh, if I could just tell all that I know.
You know that Al and Fred aren't actual people. These are just stories. Though, I mean, you may have some experience with brownies, but unrelated, of course.
Yeah. Just be careful. I know a lot of things about you too, mister.
Anyways, after Candace made her announcement, the trio of trouble were overjoyed. Yay, they said. Brownies, said Fred and I. Deep down, we knew we wouldn't actually get to eat any brownies, at least not the kind most kids are accustomed to. You see, while Candace was a very vigilant elder sister, she was afflicted with what came to be known as the brownie curse. You see, every time she tried to make brownies, something inevitably went wrong. Either she mixed up the salt and the sugar, the results of which were comparable to salty cocoa sludge, forgot the baking soda, this resulted in dark chocolate hardtack, or suffered some other culinary catastrophe. Based on previous experience, we didn't have much hope that Candace's latest attempt would yield fudgy, gooey chocolate squares, but we were almost as good at being younger siblings as she was at being the elder sibling, so we just went along with it. First, we need to get a fire going so the oven heats up to 350 degrees, Candace instructed. She wasn't actually allowed to start a fire in the stove, but since she knew where the matches were, that didn't slow her down too much. A half a box of matches and several pieces of paper later, a merry fire was crackling in the firebox of the powder blue antique cook stove. As it was summer, and quite warm, we opened both doors and all the windows. In spite of this, the temperature in the cabin soon hovered around that of the furnace to which the Babylonians fed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That didn't deter Candace in the least, though. Okay, now we just have to mix up the ingredients, Candace smiled as she wiped sweat from her forehead. Do you have a recipe? Beatrice, my second oldest sister, asked. No, but I know what I'm doing, Candace replied, cracking another egg into a bowl with a cup or two of cocoa powder. About this time, the stovepipe of the cook stove had begun glowing a dull red. Alice, the third member of the trio of trouble, poured some sugar into the brown sludge that had gathered in the bottom of Candace's mixing bowl. With the precision of a heart surgeon, the trio poured the mixture into a metal baking pan while Fred and I licked the bowl. We had been told repeatedly about the dangers of consuming raw eggs, but every self-respecting 7-year-old knows chocolate brownie batter is worth the risk of contracting salmonella. Gee, Fred said, spitting out a stray bit of eggshell. This is pretty good, Candace. These brownies might just actually turn... you make the best brownies, he said, correcting himself mid-sentence when Candace started shooting daggers with her eyes. She turned her attention back to the job at hand, and with some difficulty used a long pine bough to push the pan deeper into the sizzling interior of the small cook-stove oven. She shielded her eyes with an oven mitt in an attempt to block the waves of heat radiating from the inferno-powered stove, and used her stick to close the door. The rest of us looked on, panting in the heat, and waving paper plates near our faces in an attempt to cool down. "Now we just have to wait 10 to 15 minutes, Candace said. "Then they'll be ready." "Maybe we should check on them sooner than that," Beatrice muttered. While the brownies cooked, or rather while we cooked and the brownies incinerated, we cleaned up the cabin a bit and put away the ingredients. It wasn't long before I began to notice an ominous smell coming from the oven of the little blue cookstove. Candace," I said, "do the brownies smell done to you?" Employing her stick and oven mitt technique again, Candace cracked the door of the inferno box. A cloud of black smoke rolled out of the oven like exhaust from a diesel engine. "Oh no!" Candace cried. "I think you guys burned these." I was about to defend myself and my siblings against this egregious accusation, but thought better of it since Candace was holding both a long stick and a hot pan at that particular moment. When she kicked the oven door closed and turned around, we all let out a sigh. Our brownies should have been a rich dark brown, but we were greeted by a smoking coal-black layer of burnt crusts. "We'll just eat them with some milk," Candace smiled cheerfully. We knew better than to protest when Candace sawed through the charbroiled brownies with a large serrated knife she found in a drawer and offered each of us a little black square. After nearly breaking my tooth on my first attempt to bite through my piece, I decided a soak in some milk would help with its burns, and leaned back on my chair after plunking it into my cup. Just then, we heard a vehicle approaching. This was odd, since we didn't expect Mom and Dad to return for at least a few more hours. Candace scurried to the window and looked down the rutted mountain road. When she turned around, her eyes were wide and round. "It's not Mom and Dad! Someone is coming to the cabin! I don't know who it is!" Every lesson Candace had ever learned about the danger of strangers raced through her head and ran headlong into every memory she had of that one horror movie that took place in a wooded area. The result was an immediate activation of her elder sister's protective instincts. "Guys, quick! Close the windows and doors and act like we're not here," she instructed. With lightning speed, we battened down the hatches and drew the curtains. By the time the pickup truck Candace had spotted pulled up to the cabin, we had done our best to conceal our presence. In frantic silence, Candace ushered the four of us into the north bedroom. As an afterthought, she grabbed the pound of brownies, just in case we got hungry in hiding, and then we huddled on the floor below the bedroom window. With the windows and doors closed, the temperature in the cabin rose steadily. Before long, we were all sweating like pigs. "Gee, it's so hot," I groaned, using my hand to divert a torrent of perspiration from my eyes. Just then, it occurred to me that the smoke rising from the chimney might give away our position, and I was about to express my concern when Candace shushed me. "Shh! They're here!" she hissed. As stealthily as she could, she peeked through the crack in the curtains to observe the intruders. A tall man and a woman emerged from the old white pickup and stretched. Then, as Candace watched in horror, the man reached into the back of the pickup and extracted a single item. "He's got a chainsaw!" Candace squeaked. "They're chainsaw murderers!" She sank back down with her back to the wall and surveyed her younger siblings. Resolve filled her eyes, and she said, "Stay here. I'm going for help."
Now hold up here. I knew I needed to fact check you. You're bound to tell a fib here and there.
Hey,
Now, there were 3 intruders. 2 of them were men, 1 was a woman, and they were big, and they were covered in tattoos. And I didn't just leave as soon as they showed up. The 3 of them circled the cabin a few times, and when they headed to the water tank, that's when I left for help.
is there anything else you would like to tell to the jury?
That you are taking a lot of liberties here. That's what I have to say.
Well, okay, regardless of the number of men that showed up in your experience, I think this story includes just 2 people. But
No, it doesn't. There legitimately were 3 people.
well, okay. Point is, Candace was going for help, doing what she does best. So she yelled, "Beatrice, you're in charge!" I could almost hear the heroic music begin playing in Candace's head as she scrambled over the old linoleum floor and eased the bedroom door open. "Candace, don't leave us," Alice pleaded. "I'll be back with Mom and Dad soon," Candace promised. "Just stay quiet." With that, she slunk out the back door and streaked off toward the sawmill. Beatrice checked on the position of the chainsaw murderers in front of the cabin. "They're not coming to the cabin," she reported excitedly. "They're going into the trees." We heaved a collective sigh of relief and looked at each other's red faces. The north bedroom had taken on an almost sauna-like atmosphere by now. I desperately wanted to open a window, but my fear that the chainsaw murderers would find us and chop us into little bits was stronger than my need for fresh air. "Do you think Candace will suspect anything if we throw these brownies away?" Fred asked. Meanwhile, Candace was nearing the sawmill, having sprinted the whole way. Thoughts of her little siblings being reduced to manageable pieces by a saw-toting psychopath motivated her to run faster than she had ever run before.
You have no idea how true that is. Candace must have been so scared.
And she was none too tall either, so... Oh, man. Yeah, she made it over to the sawmill in record time. "Mom! Dad!" she yelled with what little breath she had left. "There's someone at the cabin, and they have a saw!" she panted. Dad cut the mill's engine and removed an earplug. "What's going on?" he asked. "Did you run here from the cabin? Is everything okay?" "We have to get to the cabin," Candace wailed. "It might already be too late." "Calm down," Mom said in a soothing voice. "Let's get in the truck. I'm sure everything will be just fine. Wow, you're sweaty." By the time Mom, Dad, and Candace reached the cabin, the ominous sound of a chainsaw had been whining on outside for several minutes. For all we knew, the homicidal maniac was just getting in some practice before he came for us. To make matters worse, the inside temperature of the cabin was approaching that of a brick kiln, and we were starting to wonder if an encounter with the chainsaw murderer wouldn't be better than dying of heat stroke inside. "Hey, you guys! Mom and Dad are here! Candace found them!" Alice shouted, peeking through the curtains. Sure enough, Mom and Dad emerged from the pickup truck moments later and walked up to the cabin door. We rushed out of the north bedroom to greet them, leaving the charred remains of the brownies behind. "Wowee!" Dad said when the blast of hot air from the cabin hit him. "Do you guys actually have a fire going?" "Mom, Dad, we're so glad you're here!" Beatrice cried, throwing her arms around Mom. "We thought we were goners." "Well, if you don't get some air in here and put out that fire, you're going to be," Mom said. "Candace said those people were chainsaw murderers," I blurted out. Just then, the chainsaw engine abruptly stopped, and we turned toward the tree line. A moment later, 2 figures emerged from the pines.
They aren't murderers, Dad laughed. Those are your cousins. Cousins? Candace asked in disbelief. Yes, they're my Uncle Jeff's kids, Dad grinned. I can't believe you thought they were murderers. I bet you thought Sasquatch was around here somewhere too. Huh, Candace? Fred and I busted a gut laughing until Candace shot us one of her death glares. I ducked just in time, but it caught Fred full in the face and his laugh petered out pretty quick. How's it going? Dad asked as the not chainsaw murderers approached. Howdy, the man smiled with a big grin. Now that I got a better look at him, he seemed a lot less threatening. He set his chainsaw down in the bed of the truck and shook Dad's hand. We saw some faces peeking through the curtains, so we decided we better not go inside so we didn't scare your kids, Dad's cousin said. Yeah, I'm glad they didn't scare anyone, Beatrice said pointedly. Candace rolled her eyes. When we pulled up, we wondered why there was a fire going in the middle of the day, Dad's cousin continued. Yeah, Dad said, turning to Candace. Why is there a fire going? We made brownies, Candace beamed. Did you now? Mom smiled. In this heat? How'd they turn out? Fred and I shared a glance, but didn't say anything. You'll have to try them, Candace said. Sure, Mom said. But let's eat them out here. Even now, years later, whenever we're all together on the mountain, we like to remind Candace of the time we narrowly avoided getting killed by chainsaw murderers. She likes to remind us that it's far better to be safe than sorry, and I'd have to agree. Thankfully, murderers haven't invaded the mountains since that day, but that doesn't mean we're going to let Candace forget about it anytime soon.
Yeah. Laugh all you want and tell your little story, but I firmly believe that I am the hero of this story. I mean, Candace is the hero of this story. I was the little girl version of Paul Revere. Besides, I think you forgot to tell the part about me being the one to go get help because you and Fred were bound to get lost on the way to the sawmill or get into another fight, and then we never would have gotten help.
Well, I suppose there is some truth to that, and there's plenty of truth to my stories in their own way. But I can't remember. Did we make the brownies that you brought into the bedroom to sustain us during the siege, or?
Those brownies we had made at home in the trailer house and then taken up with us to the mountain.
Okay. But I remember baking something in that cook stove and just it being so hot in the cabin.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure at one point we tried it. Yeah, maybe Thanksgiving at the cabin. But yeah. No. I have to ask, I mean, Candace is one thing, but how's the brownie curse coming?
I think now's a good time to end your podcast, Connor.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for joining me for this story. I'm glad you could set some perceived creative liberties straight. And we'll have to do it again sometime. It's way more fun with a guest.
Yeah, it's good. This was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm sure I could find a story that involves Candace. There are plenty of them on this side of nowhere.
Candace may have been a ringleader for a lot of things.
Yeah, there are tons of stories. So, yeah, you'll have to join us the next time we tell a story here on the podcast. As always, you can reach me at Untold Tales, the podcast, at gmail.com. And we'd love to hear any comments you have. Be sure to follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts so you get notified each time a new episode drops. And as always, we will see you here next time on Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time.